Good morning, everyone. I'm going to do a talk today on the Tibetan Wheel of Life, or just a very rough guide to the Tibetan Wheel of Life. So we can get something from it. It's only going to be a very rough idea, a rough guide. So it's also going to be a share screen. So let's start that. There we are. So this is the Wheel of Life, and it's used as a teaching vehicle in Buddhism. And it represents samsara, which is the cycle of birth and death, which we have to transcend if we are going to reach enlightenment. Now, the symbolism of the Wheel of Life can be interpreted on several different levels. The 6 major sections, which you see around here, and these represent 6 realms of existence that we could be born into. But they can be taken as states of consciousness. So they're not just dealing with the states we're born into, they're states of consciousness that we may have during life as well. In each of the realms, the Buddha, or the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, or Kuan Yin appear to show that there is a way to liberation from this wheel. One must reach the human realm, and from there, those who realize enlightenment find their way out of the wheel to this higher state, to nirvana or moksha. The creature holding this wheel is Yama, the lord of the hell realms, hellish realms. He wears a crown of 5 skulls that symbolize the impermanence of the 5 aggregates. These are the 5 aggregates with consciousness at the center. And from them radiate forms, feelings, perceptions, formations. I won't go too far into this at the moment. That's a lecture in itself. Forms, feelings, perceptions, formations, and consciousness are known as the 5 aggregates. And the skulls can also symbolize the 5 poisons. Move a little bit further up. The 5 poisons. Again, I'll just go into the very quickly. So the five poisons are anger, pride, desire, envy or jealousy, and ignorance. Each has an antidote. The antidote for anger is patience, for pride, equanimity, for desire, compassion, for envy and jealousy, joy, and for ignorance, wisdom. And there are other qualities below which really don't concern us for this particular talk. But you can look over them if you wish for a few moments. He also has a third eye that symbolizes the wisdom of understanding impermanence. And he is sometimes shown adorned with a tiger skin, which symbolizes fearfulness. The tiger skin is typically seen hanging beneath the wheel. He has 4 limbs in many representations that are clutching the wheel, and these symbolize the sufferings of birth, old age, sickness, and death. So let's just go back quickly. You can just have a look at those things. I think you can just about see a tiger skin at the bottom. Here, I think, as far as I can see, he's only got 2 hands. Maybe I'm wrong. But in some representations, he does have the 4 hands. And we can see the third eye. which to me also represents some kind of spiritual understanding. And the face of Yama, who represents the transience of life, peers over the top of the wheel. In spite of his appearance, Yama is not evil. He is a wrathful being, devoted to protecting Buddhism and Buddhists. Most Buddhist temples have these wrathful deities at the entrance. They are meant to scare away evil entities who threaten Buddhism and the practitioners of Buddhism. He also reminds us of the inevitability of death. The Bhagavad Gita says that we should not grieve over the inevitable. So now let's look at an overview of the wheel. These things we're going to talk about in a bit more detail. We've got the Buddha pointing at the moon symbolizing liberation. We've got Yama, Lord of Death, turning the wheel. The wheel is not static, it turns. We're on it like a hamster in a cage. We've got the 12 links of dependent origination, which I'll go into in detail, and the 6 realms of the Deva, Asura, hungry ghosts, hell, animals, and humans, and 3 root delusions, which I'll go into next. So that's a rough overview of the Wheel of Life. Probably everything is in that picture that needs to be said. So, in the center of the wheel, we have the forces that keep it turning, and these are represented by a cock, a snake, and a pig, which represent greed, anger, and ignorance. In Buddhism, greed, anger, or hate, and ignorance are those are 3 poisons. We have the 5 poisons. These are the 3 poisons. Because they poison our perception of spirituality. So we have to try to avoid these 3 things: greed, anger, or hate, and ignorance. So like I said, they keep the wheel turning. The circle outside the center is called the Siddha, or white path, and the dark path. On one side, bodhisattvas guide beings to rebirths in the higher realms of devas, gods, and humans. On the other, demons lead beings to the lower realms of hungry ghosts, hell beings, and animals. It represents the battle that goes on in our minds between spiritual and materialistic influences. H.P. Blavatsky writes in The Key to Theosophy, Manas, a dual principle in its functions, mind intelligence, which is the higher human mind, whose light or radiation links the monad for the lifetime to the mortal man. The future state and the karmic destiny of man depend on whether Manas gravitates more downward to Kama Rupa, the seat of the animal passions, or upwards to Buddhi, the spiritual ego. In the latter case, the higher consciousness of the individual spiritual aspirations of mind, or Manas, assimilating Buddhi, now Buddhi is the divine intuition, are absorbed by it and form the ego, the spiritual ego, which goes into Devachanic bliss. And Devachan is a heaven-like state that we go into between lives. It's where Christians get their idea of heaven, but it's not a permanent state. We eventually are reborn. So now let's look at the 6 realms in detail. First, looking at an overview. So we've got the heaven world of gods, Indra's palace, Devas, the Titan world, the Asuras, the demons, animal world, beasts, hell, cold hell and hot hell, and the great judgment. We have the good angel and the evil angel in a tussle for our souls, fight for our souls, perhaps. We have the hungry ghosts, the praetors, and the human world. And that is not the order I usually see them in. And I don't know why they're in that particular order, but let's look at them now in detail, but in a more orthodox order. So first, we have at the very top, the world of devas or gods. And this represents those beings who live a privileged life and care little for others, like the Pratyeka Buddhas who strive selfishly for their own enlightenment, or people who are self-satisfied in their own little worlds or their ivory towers. Indeed, this looks like a kind of ivory tower, or at least a tower. The way to freedom from this is meditation or compassion, to think of those less fortunate and to help by sharing what they have. They have to come out of their bubble and learn to understand and care for others. And we may think of many people in the world, particularly the richer ones, the ones on very high positions in the world, who are like this. Next, going clockwise, is the realm of Asuras, or warring gods, people who have anger issues, states of mind in which people war against themselves and against others. So they must learn to meditate on becoming calm and cultivating gentleness and love for all beings. They must get rid of this attitude of mind that's very aggressive. And aggression is very common in this modern society, in individuals, countries, etc. Why are we so aggressive against each other? Why do we fight against each other? Why do we seem to dislike each other, be afraid of each other, even hate each other? It doesn't make any sense when we think about it. So learn to cultivate gentleness and love for all beings. Next, we have the praetors, or hungry ghosts, who have very narrow necks, which prevent them from eating or drinking, so they suffer torment. This represents those who are never satisfied. They want more and more, but never achieve happiness. So they must learn to be generous and to be happy with what they have, and to enjoy the simple things in life that are free: love, nature, beauty, spiritual treasures. They're always seeking for something more and more exciting, but it doesn't last very long. It fades. So at the bottom we have the hellish realms. I think on the left we have the hot hells, on the right we have the cold hells, and in the middle we have Yama, Lord of Death, and the hellish realms. And these beings are going through various torments. So it's the state of mind in which people torture themselves, maybe through guilt, or because of their reaction to others and the world around them, or through the lower emotions like anger, jealousy, and lust, the poisons that we mentioned. People here must learn to be compassionate and caring, and to have patience, and understand that what happens in this life only affects the lower self. The spiritual self is untouched. It says in the Bhagavad Gita that with regard to spiritual self, water cannot wet it, fire cannot burn it, wind cannot dry it, the sword cannot cleave it. If we're fixed in this divine self, nothing can touch us. It is only the personality that ever suffers. That's the hellish realm. So next we come to the realm of animals. And these are people living animalistic lives, concerned only with the basic things of finding food, building a home, raising a family, etc. All important, but there has to be a spiritual dimension too. So people here need to develop the spiritual nature. HPB says, the essence of theosophy is the perfect harmonizing of the divine with the human in man. The adjustment of his godlike qualities and aspirations and their sway over the terrestrial or animal passions in him. Kindness, absence of every ill feeling or selfishness, charity, goodwill to all beings, and perfect justice to others as to oneself are its chief features. He who teaches theosophy preaches the gospel of goodwill, and the converse of this is true also. He who preaches the gospel of goodwill teaches theosophy. It's teaching the animal man to become a human man or woman. Teaching the human man or woman to be an animal. Teaching the animal man or woman to be a human man or woman. So the final realm is the human one. Here people are best adapted to study the teachings of the Buddha and therefore more able to reach enlightenment. So all the other realms, although the Buddha is there to lead them out of that realm, they must eventually enter the human realm to be able to find the way to enlightenment. Because it's a realm where people are more balanced, they have more balanced qualities. They're not dominated by one particular quality as they are in the other realms. So they're able to study the teachings of the Buddha and any other spiritual teachings that lead to enlightenment. So these are the 6 realms. So next we have, around the edge here, we have the 12 nidanas. Now these are on the outer circle in the wheel of life. And they describe the chain of causation by which the cycle of death and rebirth, known as samsara, is created. They're also known as the 12 links of dependent origination. With basic ignorance as the first cause, each link in the chain is both the result of the previous nidana and the cause of the next, so one leads on to the other. This sequence operates moment to moment, as well as lifetime to lifetime. So we have, the first is, at the top, is avidya, or ignorance. This is represented by a blind person groping the way with a cane, because that's like the blind, being ignorant, blind to spiritual truths. The second is samskara, karmic formation, a potter shaping a vase, forming the karma, by the way they act in body, speech, and mind. Vijnana, consciousness. This is said to be the consciousness which propels one towards next existence. It's a monkey swinging from a tree. But I always relate this with the monkey mind, kindness here and there, not focused. Namarupa, which is name and form. 2 men or 5 men in a boat. And these are the constituent elements of mental and physical existence. We get name and form, which are really illusions, the scale of things. 6 ayatanas, house with 6 windows, the 6 senses. We have 6 senses in Buddhism: sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. But the lower mind is regarded as the 6th. And the 5 senses are called the 5 thieves, because they steal away our awareness of our spiritual nature. But the chief hoodlum is the mind, because that's the one that's behind the whole thing, the whole process of the illusions that are created. Sparsha, contact, lovers consorting, kissing, or entwined. That's when we get contact with our senses, with the material nature, the sensations that come next, Vedana, sensation. Person with an arrow in their eye, because these sensations can be painful, they can create suffering. Trishna is the thirst of material existence, material life, holding on to pleasurable sensations. Person drinking or partying. Upadana, grasping. A man or monkey picking fruit. You have this grasping to sensual life, to sensation, to material life. Bhava, becoming, and through grasping to material life, one creates the karma that determines one's next existence. This is a couple embracing or engaged in intercourse. Jati, birth. Through the power of becoming, one is reborn in a particular situation, and that's a woman giving birth. Then we've got Jara Marana, old age and death. Following birth, there's also aging and death. That's the process we have to go through: birth, maturity, old age, and death, constantly in a circle, in a cycle, and that's a corpse. So that's very briefly is the 12 Nidanas. Again, you could give a lecture on each one. So let's just have a look at very quickly at a different way of looking, a view of it, a different way of looking at it. So at the top we have the blind person walking, ignorance, karmic activity, the potter shaping a vessel, conceptual thinking, monkey grasping, words, images, two men in a boat, sense perception, house with 6 windows, contact, attraction, lovers kissing, judgment, fixation, arrow piercing eye, satisfied thirst, drinker being served, clinging, desire, a man picking fruit or a monkey picking fruit in some, conception becoming, sexual intercourse, birthing, creating, a woman birthing, and dying, releasing, which is an interesting way of looking at dying as a release, corpse being carried, and then back to the beginning. Of course, then we have the heavenly realm, ecstasy, beauty, pleasure, realm of pure, then we've got the next one, which is the realm of rage and conflict, which we call the Asura realm, violence, envy, jealousy. Then the realm of animals, instincts, survival, self-preservation. Hell realm, agony, terror, depression. Realm of frustrated craving, greediness or neediness. Addiction, compulsion. Human realm, purpose, agitation, possibilities. So we've gone round the cycle again. Again, we've got the center, the pig, the snake, and the rooster, the 3 poisons. So that's another way of looking at the wheel of life and the 12 Nidanas and the 6 realms. So in the upper left-hand corner of certain depictions of the wheel of life is a temple with a seated Buddha. A stream of beings rise from the human realm towards the temple, and this represents Nirvana. In fact, the building is the entrance to Nirvana. Artists creating a wheel of life fill this corner in different ways. Sometimes the upper left-hand figure is a Nirmanakaya Buddha. A Nirmanakaya, according to theosophical teaching, is a being who stays behind to help humanity. You have the choice of going into Nirvana or staying behind to help humanity, like the Bodhisattva. But the Nirmanakaya doesn't actually come into physical manifestation. He's an influence. He influences and inspires certain people from a higher realm of being. And sometimes the artist paints a moon, which symbolizes liberation. And in many pictures, we have this the Buddha, he was pointing in a way with his hand towards the moon, and the moon represents, in Buddhism, represents liberation, represents spiritual liberation, the full moon. Here we see a representation with that in the right hand corner at the top. You can see the Buddha with his hand raised. In the left, you can see the full moon representing liberation. So as I said before, the Tibetan Wheel of Life is used in Buddhism as a teaching method containing all the basic teachings of Buddhism. It depicts samsara, cycle of birth and death, that needs to be broken to achieve enlightenment. So I'll end it there. I hope you got something from this. I know it was a very brief representation of the Wheel of Life. There are many, many different paths that you can go up to study. Well, this was just like a synopsis. So I hope you got something from it, and thanks for watching and listening. So I will just say, Om Shanti, 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 peace, 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 peace on earth and goodwill to all beings. Thank you.